What is up? It is Andy. It is Sunday, and if it's Sunday and you're hearing from me, it probably means one thing. It's a special occasion. And it absolutely is, because we got the NHL Playoffs starting tomorrow, and I want to give you a couple of bets, but more so, those bets will allow me to tell you what I think about these series and which way I'm kind of leaning in each of those series, and of course, the reason why you're here, some bets that I can give you to take before those series start. Now, I know many of you are impatient. I don't want to wait. I want to bet for that day that I can win in 5 minutes and then flip a coin and it's over and I have money and I keep going. But that's why you didn't take the Colorado Avalanche to win the division back in February when I told you if you did that, you'd be enjoying the fruits of your sniff. But you wanted that quick money. Even if you wanted the quick money, the Avalanche came through for you the final third of the season. But they closed that division on the last night of the game when everyone was watching. I was happy. Last game of the season with everyone watching, it finished the first major sniff, and that was Colorado winning the division. And also the other picks that I gave, Colorado under 7.5, Colorado both teams under 4.5. Came through, and of course Devontae's with a goal under 30 seconds in that game. Within 5 minutes of that game, he had a goal, an assist, and 3 shots on goal. So all those props covered. It was a great way to end this season with the Rakers' delight going into the time period where I made Rakers' delights famous, and that's the NHL playoffs. Now, before we talk about the playoffs, I'm going to remind you of something that I said during the regular season, and it also applies to the playoffs. If you go to Bet365 and you place a $1 bet and you're a new user on the platform, they will credit you with $200 in free bet credits as long as you're over 21 and located in a state or province where sports betting is permitted. And if you got a problem, like you refuse to bet series props because it takes too long, that might be a problem. And if that's you, maybe you should think about calling 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, looking at some of these series, I think maybe it's fitting that I start at a place kind of where we made the majority of our money last season, and that's with the Tampa Bay Lightning. You know, Toronto was favored in that series, and I was just so disgusted at the amount of disrespect the back-to-back champs were getting. And as you've seen, with my love for the Avalanche, there is a champion's armor that a team, they wear so that when they're facing adversity, it always shows up. And what's adversity? Being down 3-2 to the Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 6 and in the series, winning that. Being down 2-0 to the Rangers, winning 4 in a row, because the confidence that a championship brings allows you to dig yourself out of the hole, opposed to a team who hasn't won it, like before Colorado won it, and they went up 2-0 on Vegas and then lost 4 straight. They didn't have that champion's confidence, but now they're going into it. And similarly, on the other side, I think Colorado they were the, I'm just forgetting sayings. That broke the camel's back. The straw that broke the camel's back? Yeah, so they were the straw that broke the camel's back. You saw things that you never previously saw from the Lightning. You saw them give up multiple leads in that series, lose games. Game 4 against Colorado, Game 6 against Colorado, both on home ice. Colorado was able to come back when they were trailing and win those games. I think there was a leak in the boat last year, and you started to see it. You saw these Tampa Bay Lightning, year by year, you're just plucking members off of that original core. You know, that first year when they won, that stacked squad where they even added guys like Shattenkirk, and they had that full third line with Coleman, Goudreau. They lost Tyler Johnson. They lost Palat last year. They lost Yanni Gourde to the expansion draft. They've done the best they can to plug the holes. But eventually it's too much. They lost McDonough, and I think this is the year where it finally catches up to them. So I am going to take the Toronto Maple Leafs to win this series against the Tampa Bay Lightning. How do you like that? Imagine all that stuff that I said about the Lightning last year. Look, I don't fall in love, long-term with teams. This year's Lightning team is not last year's Lightning team, which wasn't the Lightning team before. Each year, the first year didn't even get taken to a 7th game. Next year got taken to 7 once. you saw it slowly start to build. So I'm taking the Leafs to win that series. But then another bet that I saw that I like, Leafs to win game 1 and win the series. The rationale behind that, when I look at Tampa Bay starting these series, recently they have been notoriously slow starters, just working in reverse. They lost game 1 to Colorado. They lost game 1 to the Rangers. They trailed in game 1 to Florida, but Florida lost every game in that series. Lost game 1 to Toronto. They lost game 1 to the Islanders in the conference final. Before that, yeah, they didn't lose game 1 to Montreal, but that was a scam team in the finals anyway. But they are notorious game 1 underperformers. We'll see if they take a different approach this year. But given what I saw last year, and given how even just a week ago Toronto was able to put 4 pucks or 5 pucks past Vasilevsky, I like Toronto game 1 and to win the series, but it doesn't mean that there aren't things to take there for the Lightning. For example, I like Nikita Kucherov to have the most points in the series. That's over plus 300. Why is that? Because Tampa Bay is overly reliant on that top line, just as they were last year, just as the point Kucherov line the year before that when Stamkos was out. They are extremely dependent on the power play and that top line with Point and Kucherov. So when you think about Toronto, they have 2 stacked top 6 line. Who knows? One night it can be Marner Matthews. The next night it can be Nylander Tavares, and it might be spread throughout. But I think with the Lightning, you're going to get a high concentration of points. And I get it. Nikita Kucherov is actually the favorite to actually take this one, but I actually like that price. I mean, you're getting over plus 300 for someone who I think, I would price him at plus like 150, 200. I understand the skill level of some of those guys on Toronto, but it's just the fact that it gets spread more throughout the top 6 there, opposed to on Tampa, where they're going to heavily rely on that top line once again. So that's a bet that I like there. Now moving on to a different series. Let's talk about Minnesota and Dallas. We've been chasing those teams as people who back the Avalanche to win the division, win the West. Those teams have been so close in the standings. That's post All-Star break, and now they're playing each other. Do you want to know what I like in this series? That the series goes 7 games. Yes, that's a bet. How many games will this series end in? This seems destined for 7. So I'm not going to give you a winner in this one, and neither should you. Don't look at me and tell me you know who's going to win. You don't. When you talk about Gustafsson and Ottinger, 2 great goalies, and then 2 teams, I want to give a little bit of an edge to Dallas because I think that power play in some of their regular season meetings definitely caused Minnesota some problems. But Minnesota, as you saw, as you made money off them in the final third or second half of the season, you saw how much they were even winning without Kaprizov. They got him back. And I know they rested a lot of players in that final week. They'll be ready to go. They're the hardest working team. I expect unders in this series, which is why game 1 is set to under 5.5. But my favorite bet for this one is that it goes 7 games. Colorado, I'll keep things simple. They never got pushed to 7 games once last season. They lost 1 road game all playoffs long. At the end of the season, I believe they ended on a 10-game road winning streak, and I have no reason to believe that this series will be taken to 7 games. So I'm going to take the Colorado series spread minus 1.5. So minus 1.5, meaning they have to win in either 4, 5, or 6. It just can't go 7 games. I must say, Edmonton, LA. The chalk thought is, oh yeah, Edmonton's just going to win. This LA team's better than they were last year. Edmonton finished on an absolute blazing hot streak. But as you saw last year with that series, it went 7. Wouldn't be surprised if that happens again. This is kind of a stay away for me. Edmonton, they need to show me something come playoffs. They showed me something in the final third of the season. No doubt about it. They seem to have good depth now with those forwards. The Ekholm trade really seemed to help them out. But let's see if Skinner holds up in the playoffs and their defense holds up in the playoffs, because that is where I kind of worry about them the most, as you guys remember from the middle part of this season. Vegas, Winnipeg. This one, it has the crusty ability to have an upset because of the styles these two teams play. Ideally, they both actually want to be playing in low-scoring games, so I think that's going to let the Jets linger around in this series. I think it's a weirdly bad matchup for them. I think this one goes 7 games. If I had to do a pick for this one, I would do Vegas in 7 games. Not too dissimilar to when they played Minnesota 2 seasons ago, I believe. Everyone thought Vegas was just going to cruise through that one. That was a 7-game series, and I weirdly think this might be like that as well. Might. So I think that concludes the Western Conference. Let's go over to the Eastern Conference. You got Rangers, Devils. The Devils are favored in this series. I haven't seen one single person who's not a Devils fan say that they're excited to take the Devils. Now, as a guy who would have taken the Rangers, and I still kind of want to, that's just a little concerning. It's a little concerning. I do wonder why the Rangers are underdog. I get it. They're the road team. But I think the Devils have the question marks here, the experience, the goaltender. When you look at how Shesterkin closed the season in his final 10-15 games, he was putting up the numbers like Vezina winning Shesterkin. You saw the offense click together. That third line with the kids is playing well. What reasons are there to doubt the Rangers against an inexperienced team other than that inexperienced team really caused them problems? And if you're going to cause the Rangers problems, it's going to be with speed and an offense that controls the puck like they do. They went, I believe, was it 3-0-1 or 3-1 against the Rangers? And that's probably why, if you watch that Pittsburgh series from last year, when Pittsburgh hit them with a lot of speed and skill and tested their D 5-on-5, if it wasn't for Crosby going out in that series, they were done. They were down 2-0 at home. When Crosby was in there, Crosby got knocked out. They ended up coming back in Game 5, then won Game 6 and 7. So I can see that. However, if I'm going to go down, I guess I'm going down with the chalk like everybody else, but at least one differentiator. If I take a team who starts on the road to win the series, and I did this a bunch of times 2 years ago with the Islanders. If the Islanders were going to beat Boston, it wasn't going to be in Game 7 in Boston. It was going to be in Game 6 in New York. If they were going to beat Pittsburgh in round 1, it was going to have to end Game 6 in New York. So if you want to take the underdog at -1.5 games, so I'll take the Rangers at -1.5 games simply because if it goes to 7, I don't want to have to rely on the Rangers to go on the road and win, even though they can, as you saw with Carolina. But if they're going to win, in my opinion, it's probably going to be in 6. So if I'm going to take them, I'd rather put up less money and say it's going to happen in 6 than put up less and, give me the option to win it in 7. So give me the Rangers series spread -1.5. Now we can go over to my team, the New York Islanders, who a lot of pundits are picking to win this series. Can they win? Yes. And I'm not saying that because I'm an Islanders fan. I think they would have lost in 4 or 5 to the Boston Bruins. This has to do with Carolina, who, if you watch my videos, you know everything I said about them towards the end of the season. I believe they finished the season, was it like 9-1 or something like that? They had trouble scoring. They lost Pacioretty. They lost Svechnikov, and they have trouble scoring. And their power play post-Svechnikov injury was barely over 10%. So they have a struggling power play. Freddie Anderson, who you've never been able to trust in the playoffs. And they have unreliable scoring, depth scoring, and things of that nature. So yeah, they're going to have to rely on defense. If the Islanders play defense, and it's defense or defense, and it's just a question of, all right, well, who's going to make the most of their limited opportunities? Now, when you look at the forwards, you have a major X factor in this, and Matt Barzal is going to be back Game 1. On the flip side, Alex Romanov, the fourth defenseman on the Islanders, is not going to be back, and if you know how Carolina plays, they feast on the turnovers, and defenders 4, 5, and 6 of the Islanders tend to cough the puck up a lot. So I do think that's, the bonus of Barzal on offense might be semi-negated by the absence of Romanov on defense. So what I'm going to do in this series, because Barzal's going to be back, the Jordan Staal line, who shut down the Pasternak line at home last season, at home when they had the benefit of last change in that playoff series. They're going to be on the Horvat-Barzal line, and the top scorer this year in this series, because there's no Svechnikov, is Brock Nelson. And you can get him for most goals in this series at +800. Brock Nelson. So if you look at both of these teams, who scored the most goals? I believe it's Brock Nelson. I think him and Aho are right there. But when you look at him being on the top power play, him getting the majority of good looks because he's not going to deal with the stall line. He scored against Carolina a couple times this season, I believe in 2 of the 4 games or something like that. I think he's a sneaky good bet to be the leading scorer in this one. I'm not 100% sure who's going to win it. Here's what I think you should do if you're going to take Carolina. Do Carolina to win game 1 and Carolina to win the series. Because if they split the first 2, then the Isles got a chance, and then I suggest doing what I just said about the Rangers series. I don't think the Isles are winning Game 7 in Carolina, so if you want to take the Islanders, you take a -1.5, where they'll close it in 6 at home, and that's like plus 330 or plus 340. So if you think Carolina's limping a little bit here, and they're looking a little weak heading into playoffs, and you think the Islanders can upset them, I'd rather you take them -1.5, plus 330 or something like that, than just take them to win the series at like plus 140. That's my little tip to you in that one. And I think lastly, you got Boston, Florida. There's not really much to bet on in this one other than I saw a head-to-head Brad Marchand versus Alex Barkov. I think Barkov's one of the best players in the league. He's registered points in almost all his games against the Bruins. I think he'll be heavily involved with the points that are accumulated. Now, just like I told you with that Toronto series, the reason I like Kucherov for the most points in that series is because of how Toronto can kind of spread it around all their stars. Same type of thing with Boston. They have 2 stacked lines. They have Hall and Bertuzzi on the 3rd line. They're going to spread it around as well. Meanwhile, Barkov, I believe he registered points. It was like he averaged 1.5 points, I think, in his final like 15 games, if you combine all the points. Something like that, because he was injured. Listen, I give you these numbers because I know they're half there. They're on the top of my head. He's averaged 1.5 points for around 10, 12, 14, 15 games, something like that, after he came back from the injury when they went on this stretch to make the playoffs because they were originally out of it. So that's what I like for that particular series. Everybody, I will be back with you tomorrow. One thing I do want to tell you. You see these? The sniffer tees are available for purchase. I got the whole order. I can ship them out. They're ready to go. You can either go to my Instagram shop right on the front page right there, or you can go to andyfrancis.com. How do you like that? And it will redirect you to the store. You put your order in. I could send it out ASAP. The other shirts you see on there, I should have by Tuesday, I believe. But these ones are ready to ship out. Are you a sniffer? Are you? Well, we'll see about that. All right, everyone. I will see you tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribed to the Odd Shopper channel here, and I'll talk to you then.